Folks, it is rough out there. Today was one of the best Mondays we've seen in quite a while, and it's mostly because, well, the market was closed today.
Joining a fan club with my friends, filling our bathrooms with t-shirts and 8x10s. So dreamy, I'm in love from afar.
Okay, first an update on the Marqueta, which is the market for the non-Spanish speakers. Red box, more like green box, which, believe it or not, went up another 70+% at highs today. That was atop the 72% surge from Friday. And they said that DVDs weren't the future. How dare they? In fact, I'm even thinking about purchasing a VHS player because I could see where this trend is going. I even thought about going down to my local Red box and renting a DVD to celebrate. The problem though is that I forgot my DVD player sometime back in like 2012. A lot of people would say, oh, Charlie, I feel that today's going to be a bearish day. I'm going to bet everything on bearish. And then it reverses and they're like, shite, I don't know what happened. I bet all on red and I got black. Scam. Next, my thoughts on a certain lovely little alligator. Not sure if you know her, she's quite a sweetheart. Just don't get too close because she bites, unless you're into that kind of thing. I'll go ahead and put a link to ZipTrader you below. Coupon code CharlieFever will signify that you have Charlie Fever, and thus I will give you a discount to help cure that fever. But I really want to take a moment of silence for our dear friend, the NASDAQ. How often can you say the NASDAQ was down 6% today? You had a good run, friend, you really did. Rest in peace. Why put all your eggs into one sinking basket when you can put your eggs into 15 individually sinking baskets? It's like Easter, but for demented bunnies. But jokes aside, I for one am very happy that the Fed has everything under control here. Imagine if we had an irresponsible Fed right now, where would we be? We could have inflation at 4-decade highs, markets could be panicking on the weekly, worker productivity could be going down, and Johnny Depp could be suing Amber Heard for defamation. We woke up to the British pound plummeting this morning as the Bank of England warns of a recession risk and they raise interest rates over there. Many people are worried about stagflation and they see inflation hitting potentially as high as 10%. I for one am very happy that we got away from those guys in the Revolutionary War. I wouldn't want to be dealing with those problems. But seriously, pretty damn rough day. Sometimes it feels like I'm a commentator for a losing sports team. Oh, better luck next time, S&P. NASDAQ, it's just had a few bad seasons. ARK, and then of course in the game you've also got referees who call the games unfairly and bet on whoever they are going to favor. And then of course you can't forget the maintenance staff on the field who lets the field get ripped up and then says, don't worry, the field issues are just transitory. We're gonna maintain that real soon. It teaches us skills that we can learn and apply to all these different areas in our lives, not just the market. But this isn't a pep talk video. We like our UVXY index going up, we like our SQQQ index going up and providing a lot of opportunities, and we like getting good deals on stocks. But I think we would be lying, we'd be dirty little liars if we said that this market wasn't challenging and that pessimism wasn't contagious. So I woke up this morning and I smelt a fire. I was about to call the fire department, but before I did, I realized that the smell that I was smelling was just the smell of burning equities. Let's be real, Palantir stock right now looks like a rabid dog on the side of a truck stop. People have been kicking on it, it smells weird, it looks like its fur's all ripped up and dirty, it hops, it can barely walk anymore, and it looks like it's about to die. People want to put it out of its misery because it looks painful just to watch it suffer. But that's Palantir the stock, right? If you look at Palantir the company, they just reported a pretty damn good quarter. I'm old enough to remember the good old days when stocks would go up sometimes. When coffee was $1 and Jerome Powell was our friend. Now coffee is $100, at least if you have a coupon, and Jerome Powell is on trial for equity murder. Somewhat premeditated, I hope he has a good damn lawyer. This is the 1 month heat map of the S&P 500 and today was just another day of blech. Okay folks, so you know what they say, you could take the squeeze out of the market, but you can't take the market out of the squeeze. Or something like that. In the dark shadows of Darth Powell, we, the peasant retail traders, must brave the seas of death and destruction and conquer the squeezes that may come out of the wasteland. They go up massively until they don't anymore, and then they go down, and they go down massively. It's really a beautiful process. Certainly not for everybody, but if you can trade the moves and not let the moves trade you, you can have a fun time. And in the last few days, the people have asked for one specific ticker, the B of the BIG. BBIG will explode. BBIG is my play, baby. Notorious BBIG is going to get spicy. BBIG wondering if I should buy back in. BBIG to 40. BBIG is going to be BBIG. The way that I see the stock is it's sort of like you have this gas station that has been leaking gasoline all over the place. History suggests that this gas station station is very, very prone to explosions. But with just gasoline leaking everywhere, that's not enough to have an explosion. You need something that ignites the gasoline. Someone to light a match that starts a fire that goes and explodes the whole damn place. Well, you know I love to overuse analogies, and the way that I look at this is when you drain a lake, you start revealing a lot of the crud that was underneath the surface, and if you drain it enough, the ground starts cracking. Crackito. The Fed is embarking on unprecedented draining of this overall liquidity lake. And as much as we could say, oh, there's nothing we're gonna find that's weird underneath the lake's surface, you don't know for sure until you start pulling it back. To be completely honest, the financial system has gone through a huge experiment. It was a little dirty guinea pig, a dirty one, which of course has set it up to be extra catastrophic now that we know that Target ended up not being that good of a safe haven. Now I know what you're thinking, Charlie, only 25% down? What are you complaining about? If this was a tech stock, that'd be a bullish day. I'd kill to only be down 1/4 my limbs. I've covered Tesla stock on the channel for years. I'm a fan of the Muskmeister. I think the only real way to save money these days on transportation is to buy a horse. If only Elon Musk had thought of that. Nothing symbolizes the weird time we are in right now quite as much as the baby formula shortage. There's a lot of genuine supply chain issues. And of course, governments are not very quick to correct mistakes because, ooh, that makes us look bad. And so you get to a point where the only time you get a correction is when babies are literally going without nutrition. And I came across this video I made back in June of 2020 when I used to make thumbnails that made me look like a YouTube finance supervillain. Short sellers or bears overall may be very, very high conviction that stocks are going to continue to go down overall, but when you consider how fast things can turn against you when you get those bear market rallies, all of a sudden the risk profile doesn't make sense and you start getting people say, okay, you know what, I'm going to start covering. The big R word probably will be, and I'm not talking ravishing, I'm talking recessionito, which is recession for the non-Spanish speakers. By the way, learn Spanish, come on. Based on my background and my zero scientific knowledge, although I did watch The Magic School Bus as a kid, and they did a lot of scientific exploration, if you jump and roll around in a fiery pit of lava, and once you leave, you find out that only your pinky toe is burnt, well, you know something weird is going on. Markets are up 0.01%. For all intents and purposes, flat. The trading month over month was flatter than the earth. Mullen is a company whose CEO's main background experience is from the music industry. Their battery R&D manager lists no prior commercial work experience outside of academia. I was reading some comments on my last Mullen video, which some people saw as overly critical, and a lot of folks said that, oh, experience isn't really needed for battery development. But the idea that you're just kind of born with all of this knowledge and ability to create revolutionary batteries with very, very little amounts of capital in a very short time period and completely just destroy all the other players in the race is just mind-blowing to me. I'm not saying this is a rotten egg, but it's sure pretty damn smelly. This morning, if you went on any major financial media outlet's website, you likely saw this story from Jamie Dimon, this ominous warning saying that you need to brace yourself for a hurricane. Not a small storm, not a trickle of water, but a damn hurricane. If you're expecting storm clouds, bummer. If you're outside when the storm clouds roll in, you're probably gonna get wet. But use an umbrella and you're probably fine. But if you're expecting a hurricane, oof, there's no such thing as an umbrella that's gonna help you. Not only are you gonna get wet, but you're gonna be ripped off the street and thrown into that circular hurricane thingamajiggy. Quite frankly, I don't know about you, but I'm prone to nausea. I don't want to be spun around in a circle. Here's a quick clip of what he said.
It's a hurricane.
He almost sounds like a madman yelling that the world is ending on the side of the street.
It's a hurricane.
Gas prices across the country per gallon would probably be something like $5.50 to $6. And in LA, you'd have to cut off your left foot to pay for the gas and your right toes to pay for the tax on that gas.
It's a hurricane.
I am a believer in hurricanes, but I'm not a believer in eternal hurricanes. So when a hurricane comes, I say hurricane, not hurricant. That was definitely the most cringy thing I've ever said. Okay, folks, welcome back to the Daily Dumpster Fire Report with Charlie. In today's dumpster fire, the fire got slightly less dumpstery. And you could say, Charlie, okay, that sounds perfectly logical. Obviously, a chicken could have done that. But what about the Fed? Couldn't Jerome Powell just totally screw up your great technical analysis there? Well, guess what? I thought about that too. So I went and I took the square root of Jerome Powell's forehead and I added that to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen saying she was wrong about inflation. I then added in 75 years of flawed fiscal and monetary policy, subtracted Richard Nixon taking us off the gold standard, and I came out to a concrete result that explains all of our problems. Okay, so we haven't talked for a week. Why, Charlie? Well, because I went to France, thanks for asking. And while I was there, I had some time to gather a new perspective on the market while also watching the latest round of bloodbathery. In France, they have the saying, oui, oui, bonjour, oui, oui, which means never trust the Fed, especially with inflation. And that's good advice. It dates all the way back to Napoleon. Back then, if one of his squires said something was transitory and it wasn't, let's just say that he wouldn't be squiring for long. And the CPI report released Friday was disgusting, just disgusting. And the market has certainly not been silent to this. It's been no silent little salamander. It's like you send your kid to school and you ask him to do just one thing for you, just one thing. Don't wet yourself. You don't have to pay attention. You can throw boogers at your teacher. Just don't wet yourself. There's a bathroom down the hall. And then you go and pick him up from school and guess what? His shorts, they're soaking wet and your seat is drenched. In the story, the CPI report was little Jimmy. Food at home, food away from home, food in an alleyway, wherever you eat your food, it's going up dramatically. Crypto.com says they will lay off 260 employees or 5% of its workforce. Never forget the first 3 letters of crypto are cry. Then Q4, they're thinking magically 9.8%. This is like La La Land. This is a fairy tale, a Disney movie. It's like Wizard of Oz. Except that the Tin Man is made of plastic because tin is too damn expensive. That's almost like a sick joke from a sociopath. The public will notice when prices are going up, but if you could just tell them, oh, you know, they're not going up as fast as you think. Sally, that Wonder Bread was always $100 a slice. And then, of course, the most atrocious way of manipulating inflationary data is right in front of our faces. They don't even try to hide this one. How do they do that? Well, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They say, oh, don't pay attention to the full inflation, pay only close attention to the core inflation. The core inflation is the only thing that matters. What is core inflation? Well, it's minus food and energy. Why do they say they remove it? Well, because those prices are too volatile. AKA, they can't lie about those. Let me tell you, there's nothing quite as core as the cost of food and energy to your day-to-day life. But it's too volatile, so you just can't include it. Imagine going to an AA meeting and they're like, are you sober? And you're like, yeah, if you exclude the alcohol, I'm clean as a whistle. My alcohol usage is way too volatile to be included fairly. Well, it paints the picture that it's kind of like the blind leading the blind, pretending they can see, but walking into walls. It's really, quite frankly, just a disaster. Mark my words, child labor laws will have to be overturned in order to pay the increased costs that we're going to be seeing. Your grandkids will have no choice but to spend their childhood in cobalt mines, mining for electric vehicle batteries, simply so that we could pay back the fraudulent PPP loans that we gave to celebrities who definitely didn't need it. The Fed has basically been responding to inflation by bringing a knife to a nuke fight. We'd have the same inflationary data if Jerome Powell sat on his couch and watched Netflix all day and did absolutely nothing. And hey, God knows Netflix needs the business. And then our leaders ask, why is there inflation? I thought printing dollars creates more goods and services. I didn't realize you actually need people making that kind of stuff. Please vote for me. I'll do better next time. Our Treasury Secretary said, quote, nothing to suggest the US will have a recession. Nothing to suggest the US will have a recession. Not one data point says, yeah, you know, maybe we might be heading into a recession. 4-decade high inflation, almost 4-decade low consumer sentiment, energy prices continuing to skyrocket and production going up like a snail, a history of us struggling with these same exact variables, and the Fed about to embark on the most unprecedented monetary policy tightening ever in history by a long shot, and nothing, not one thing points to a recession. This is the same person that said a couple quarters ago that inflation wouldn't be a problem. And now she's saying, don't worry about a recession. Next, she'll say, okay, well, maybe we're in a recession, but don't worry, you're not going to lose your home. And then she'll say, well, you know, maybe you lost your home, but at least our public parks have trees. And you should be thankful that we'll let you sleep under those. One of the more recent arguments, which I've concurred with a lot more, is that Amber Heard caused all this. Ask yourself the question if her pooping in Johnny's bed did anything to stop these inflationary pressures. I say no, she should be impeached. They virtue signal things like, oh, well, if gasoline prices are going up, maybe the average consumer that doesn't make much money at all and can't afford that can just make their gasoline at home, dig it up in the backyard and add some baking soda in the kitchen, and all of a sudden you got some gasolina. And obviously the only people that have actually been somewhat decent at covering this is the financial media, because they know they get clicks if they say bad things. Especially those moronic YouTubers that sit there in their fancy little suits in their ridiculously high-tax states and their little palm trees in the background. Like, bro, nobody cares about your palm trees, okay? We now have higher inflation expectations at any point than we've had since the 1970s and the beginning of the 1980s, where we got Paul Volcker and Michael Jackson. It makes the point that every time the economy goes to Dr. Fed with the ailment of inflation, the doctor figures out how to cure it, but most of the time via killing the patient. Macro situation is pretty damn bad. Even on this channel, a lot of folks have said, you know, Charlie, I wish you would stop with the heartwarming content. It's just too optimistic. Charlie, your content makes my stomach flutter with positivity. It's like little butterflies of just bullishness. But blanket negativity without strategy to take advantage of that negativity is pretty useless, isn't it? It's like, sure, yeah, maybe this does warrant crying in your room all day, but that doesn't really help anybody. So the first catalyst to look for are energy prices peaking and heading down. Not to be crude, but let's talk crude oil specifically. Things have gotten so bad that Business Insider and many other outlets are running articles today suggesting that human urine might have to be a real alternative to chemical fertilizer shortages. Better stay hydrated, folks, because Uncle Sam is gonna need you. I also want to go through the absurdity of the Fed's current projections and why I believe they're going to end up being wrong. The Fed being wrong? No, Charlie, that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? You smoking something? And as an unconventional indicator, recently I've noticed that I've started getting little gray hairs. Ever so slightly they've been popping up. Never before have I had this problem. It's a growing trend. It's not huge yet, but it's a growing trend. If you look very closely, it's very easy to see them. Now, these were not there before the Fed started tightening. You go back to January of 2021 where inflation was still going to be transitory and the stock market just kept going up. Not a single gray hair. People would comment every day on the channel saying, Charlie, your hair, it's just so beautifully black and masculine. It's just great. Then all of a sudden, coincidentally, 12 to 18 months ago, my hair starts turning more and more gray. And no longer do I get those channel comments saying you have nice hair. Now, where am I going with this? Well, you pull up a comparison between me and Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell is someone who is one of the most powerful people in the world. He can make the money printer go burr whenever he wants, and he could tell people that something is transitory for months and months on end and watch the most important currency in the world implode and still get reappointed to his job. And then you look at a schmuck like Charlie, a guy that likes sketchy spec plays like Redbox, who sits in his office and yells at a computer screen. For long-term conviction, he believes in following tech companies. Everybody knows the tech companies are a fad. Get this poor bastard some ExxonMobil. So what advantage does somebody like a Charlie have over the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell? Well, one thing really, hair color. But as rates have gone up, Charlie's hair color has turned more and more close to Jerome Powell's. Powell is not fighting prices, he's fighting to turn my hair gray, and yours as well. Jerome Powell is an older man who has conquered almost everything in his life except for two things, hair color and inflation. The second one's pretty much a sunk boat. Look, folks, he's given up on inflation, but he knows he can set a new gray standard for everybody by slowly bleeding to death the stock market. Don't believe me? Go look in the mirror and see for yourself. I guarantee you, you'll find a few gray hairs, if not many. Or maybe you got gray 20 years ago. Well, that was Alan Greenspan's fault. Or maybe you lost your hair entirely. Well, that was Paul Volcker's fault. And let's be real, folks, the mainstream media, they're not going to tell you about this because they don't want you to know about it. They don't want you pointing fingers. They want to keep you in line and wearing hats. They're paid off by the hat lobby that knows that they're going to benefit if people start going gray or even losing their hair. Mark my words, the Fed will not lower rates again until my hair is completely gray. But at this pace, that's only going to be another 8 to 9 months. So hey, bullish. U.S. crude oil production is still well below where it was pre-pandemic, which is not just crude, but it's also rude. By the way, my jokes were better before inflation. Now you get twice as many jokes, but half the quality. Thank you, Jerome Powell. Folks, we have to talk about what Michael Burry is saying. If you have followed him at all, which I'm sure you probably have, you know he's quite the drama king. He's known for The Big Short, although I hear he's quite a tall guy. Who knows what else may be misleading? But ever since The Big Short, he's been sounding the alarm on pretty much everything. He's quite the negative Nancy. Also, this video is sponsored by the handsome gentleman over at ZipTrader U and his 4th of July sale. So now, assuming that you've stacked up on enough canned goods and Jerome Powell, this is transitory dolls to get through the next upcoming apocalypse, well, there is good news. Now, what criteria does the Atlanta Fed's model take into consideration? Does it take its little pinky finger, lick it, and put it in the air, and if it's cold and it feels a little windy on it, it says recession? So why is Europe doing this? Well, basically, they broke their own legs before they had a wheelchair. And then we have a bunch of doofuses that run Western countries saying basically, you know what? We're gonna stand up and we're not gonna produce any more of these commodities to fix this problem. Let's just keep paying increased prices. So now, in my view, we are in this worst case scenario bucket, and we're deep in it. We're deep in this bucket, and there's no shovel, and we're like these little miniature gnomes that are just drowning in a bucket. Charlie, that's terrible advice. You should always recommend diamond handing. Folks, diamond handing only works if you're holding a diamond. If you're holding poop, from your neighbor's beagle, that's not going to end pretty. Ad spending by big crypto firms has plunged 90% after Bitcoin's all-time high. 90%. We went from Matt Damon telling us that fortune favors the brave at Bitcoin 68K to Matt Damon on the street today at Bitcoin 20K.